right. Welcome, everybody. Come on in. We got a lot of people already in. So, yeah, this is going to be great. We're going to have a nice chat. But before I introduce my guests, just going to let you know to be sure to subscribe. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. And without further ado, we're going to get started. So my first guest who is running for Congress, I have Mr. Julian, I'm going to mess up your last name, Acciard.
Acciard. It's no big deal.
I won't forget. How you doing, brother?
I'm not doing too bad. I got my libations. I just finished an interview with Don the Plebe. And, well, I'm not going to lie. I was wrong about what I thought would happen in this trial. I mean, but then again, after Maxine Waters' statement, it turned out exactly how I thought after that fact. I mean, if you tell people their city's going to be burnt down, if they don't acquiesce, they acquiesce. So,
gotcha. Well, yeah, that gives us a preview as to what you're going to be saying. But my next guest is the lovely Felecia Killings, Coach Felecia.
Hello, beloveds. Let's get into it.
Yeah, I know you're ready to go. You ready to go? All right. Like Wanda from A Living Color, I was ready to go. All right.
Yes.
Next. Also, both of you are from Atlanta, Georgia. We also have Miss Pinky, Nicole Pinkston. How you doing, sis?
Hi, I'm actually from Perry, which is considered middle GA. So I'm about 2 hours from everything in Georgia, from Augusta to Atlanta. But I'm still in.
You could have pretended, though. I mean,
I could have, but everybody thinks.
Damn, had to make us all look all foolish.
I know.
Everybody thinks everybody's from there anyway, so it's okay.
Yeah, it's the same difference. Yeah,
it's all right.
But everybody thinks that that's LA, so whatever.
When I lived out in California, they couldn't even find New Hampshire on a map. They were like, "Where is that?" I'm like, "Is that a state?"
What's a New Hampshire? Like, what is that?
Yeah, they'd be like, "Is that a state?" I'm like, "It's a suburb of Boston."
You got 700 people on Twitter.
Yeah, I'm seeing that. A lot of people tuning in. This is great. We're gonna rock this.
Oh wow, this is a party now.
Yeah. I'm sure.
Just a heads up. It's not that I'm not paying attention. It's just I'm live tweeting. Okay.
Oh, girl. Go ahead, do your thing. Somebody asked for it. So, I don't know why we're on here because nothing really has happened. It's been a really slow news day, so I figured we just talk about the Avengers. Well, maybe we'll talk about the trial, or maybe we'll talk about the verdict. All right. Now here's I want to obviously I want to get our reactions to the verdict, but after that I also want to talk about where we go from here as a nation, and also where we go from here as a conservative movement. So I want to cover those two things as well. So first reaction. Let's get yours first, Mrs. Pinky. What's your reaction to the verdict?
I'm not surprised. As soon as I heard that they were out and they were back, I knew it was guilty. I watch a lot of crime shows, so usually if the jury goes and then they come right back, it's usually a guilty verdict. I'm surprised that they went with murder too. That's probably where my biggest surprise is what they actually decided. But guilty, especially after everything that's led up to this, I'm not surprised it was guilty. But just the actual charge is what actually surprised me.
Mm-hmm. So were you? So you sounds like you were more surprised that he got unintentional murder to second degree and then third degree, or were you surprised by the third degree as well? Or
I thought more that they if he did get guilty, the system was going to give him a leeway and say it was more manslaughter and it was unintentional that he did it. And people are still arguing that, like right now down my feed, about whether he intended it or not. So that's the thing. But to me, I mean, I feel like I'm not a lawyer, so I feel like if you murder somebody, you got to pay some kind of consequence at all. So I don't really know the ins and outs of how they come up with these different degrees of murder, but I know murder too is a high charge, and that appeal is coming, and then that's going to spiral from there. So I thought maybe he was going to get the lesser charge, which kind of washed just a bit, but so. And guilty, as soon as I knew the jury was back already, I was like, he guilty. They gonna say
he's going to be convicted of something.
Yeah.
No. All right, so what about you, Mr. Acciard?
So I was expecting the manslaughter charge because let's be honest, police officers, guilty or not, normally don't get the highest sentence that's thrown at them. Normally they either get out of court altogether, or they get something smaller. They get the smallest charge levied. Now, in this case, they can actually. This is a jurisdiction where they don't have to choose. They don't have to prove all the charges. They can actually specifically cut it down and pick one, but they chose to go with all three. I expected manslaughter. I was not surprised by the murder 3 charge. But murder 2 was the one I did not expect, because I mean, like you said, that's intent. It's a lot harder to prove. And, well, to be completely honest, my opinion on what was going to happen changed a hell of a lot after Maxine Waters opened her big fat mouth. And unfortunately, I think she handed them a easy appeal, because now they can go back and say, well, the jury was intimidated, and they should have, for such a public trial, such a big deal. I mean, we had the entirety of the country was burning down for an entire year over this. They should have sequestered the jury in the first place, because our justice system is predicated on a fair justice system in which you're not supposed to take into account the happenings in the world around you. So for everybody out there celebrating, be wary of what you just asked for, because you once again just bolstered the power of the government to basically allow the population, allow mob rule to decide the outcome of a court case. To be completely honest, I think he should go to jail. I think he should have got the manslaughter charge, and I think murder 3 would have been an accurate charge. But murder 2, I think, was going a little bit too far. So, I mean, that's my take on it, and that's based off of, I know how he's supposed to execute that training and how he should have dealt with the situation versus how he actually dealt with the situation and all the things that he could have done. But that goes back to training.
So let me ask you this. I mean, obviously you think the fact that they weren't sequestered and, Mad Max opening her mouth may have, or somebody can make the case that could have led to that decision. Do you think that those two factors played in him getting convicted of all charges, or do you think that maybe it might have just been manslaughter if that hadn't happened, or do you think he would have just gotten off if none of that had happened?
No, I think he would have got the manslaughter charge, regardless of Maxine running her mouth. But the murder charges, I mean, it could have been 50-50 as far as murder 3 goes. But as far as murder 2, I think that's a direct result of her saying that she wanted the highest penalty that was available. And if they weren't, then they needed to get more confrontational. Gotcha. Let's be honest. These judges are people too. The jury are people too. They still have to live in this community. So if you tell me that my community is going to burn if I don't put this man in jail, well, for the sake of the lives of the people in my community, it sounds like a hell of a good idea to just put the guy in jail. I mean, at least I'm sure that's what the jury was thinking. Personally, I think that they should have been sequestered. Like I said, they should have been sequestered from the get-go. And Maxine Waters deserves the censure that Congress is bringing up against her. And any Democrat worth their salt and honesty should deliver it to her, considering that they just impeached Trump over far less rhetoric. So, and I don't care whether you like Trump or not. That's just, Maxine Waters has been doing this her entire career. She actually should face consequences for it. I don't care how pissed off she was. We're supposed to be better than that.
Well, yeah, and especially if you're a lawmaker, right? So yeah, that makes sense. So Felecia, I know you're chomping at the bit. Well, let's hear from you.
All right. First, let's congratulations, brother. You got lots of folks. Cernovich, he's the one who retweeted you.
Oh, okay.
You got hundreds of people watching on Twitter. So hey, Twitter beloveds, I pray that you are all well. Let's get into this thing. First, I think that the jury made the right choice. And I'm going to say that they made the right choice on all counts. I'm going to even say that they weren't particularly bothered by if they heard Maxine, because nobody can tell for certain if they heard Maxine Waters' comments. So whether or not that influence, you can't really tell. But I'm just going to say that the jury was brilliant. Let's just say that they, based it all based on the evidence that they were presented with. 9 minutes, guys, with this guy's, knees on his neck. 9 minutes, okay? If he said that he could not breathe and he's still there. And then I think one picture that you showed, either it was Julian or brother or somebody, where his feet were off the ground. So that's his full body weight. The man was trying to kill him. So these things are real factors. And with individuals like Steve Crowder, who was saying, he did that little demonstration. It's like, well, yeah, you breathe and talk. Well, he couldn't. So there's murder involved in this thing. Now, the only reason I was shocked about the murder too was because I did not think we would see the jury go all the way. I just thought it was going to be, especially because we're talking about the state, we're talking about the police actually being prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I was a little bit shocked by that. And in fact, I think, brother, when this story first popped off, I was a little bit worried. I think I told you that. I said, I don't know if they're going to get him. I think we're going to deal with all kind of nonsense because this is just typical. So congratulations to the jury for ascertaining properly based upon the evidence that they saw. I do think that the defense is going to obviously make an appeal. I do not believe that the appeal will move forward. I just don't believe it whatsoever. I think the verdict will remain all throughout the rest of his life, and Chauvin will be an example for the rest of the nation as it relates to police brutality. And for all the beta male white progressive Republicans out there who are whining and they're black-faced individuals, learn the Constitution and understand that everybody has citizen rights. And let me add this. I'll play the other part too, because I saw some folks in Black America who were like, why are we even having a trial when we saw this person commit this murder? Well, I still believe in due process for everybody. So Chauvin deserved due process. Yeah. George Floyd, he deserved due process. If he was committing a serious crime, he should have been able to have his day in court so that he can receive the proper punishment. Unfortunately, that did not happen. So needless to say, well,
I'm sorry, I'm reading the comments, so it makes my face. I don't have no poker face. So
that's my thoughts on it. Well, and let me add this. Pat Roberts, something's up when a miracle happens in the evangelical space. Y'all know I love my evangelical fam. I love them. I grew up with them. Okay, those are my people. But the Holy Spirit was talking when Pat Robertson said that Chauvin should be thrown under the bus or under the jail. I said, child, the Lord.
Oh, I didn't see that.
From heaven and has touched this old man. So, even for individuals like that who are like, something's wrong, something's going on here. We have some
If you want, I'll explain exactly what Derek Chauvin did versus what he should have done.
I got a question before that, though.
Because you guys saw the picture that I posted of what they did to Steven Crowder was actually how it was supposed to be done.
Steven Crowder was showing the proper technique. He actually was hurting Chauvin.
On accident.
Yeah. But I need Jeff to talk about, you were saying that 25% of the amount of drugs that people... You were watching the trial more than me, but I was watching you talk about the trial. And you were talking about how, someone sober in that position could die. And I wanted you to reiterate about the fact of if someone had the knee on their neck and they didn't have no drugs, or how much about the amount of drugs and how that affected, because people keep bringing up, well, he OD'd and he was ODing, or he was saying I couldn't breathe before he died, or he was, and I'm not a medical expert and I don't know. And I'm like, well, he died. So now I don't know if maybe he was dying, but maybe if he didn't put his knee in his neck, we would know that. But medical experts actually have better ways to, explain it. Can you explain more of that, since you watched that part of the trial? And
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll talk about that. But first, I'll just give my quick take on it. I was shocked. I thought he was going to get manslaughter, maybe third degree. Yeah. Now, I did find out later on that none of the charges actually required intent. When I found that out, I was thinking maybe second degree is a stretch, but they could get it, but I was not expecting it. So none of those charges. At first, I did think that the murder charges would require a level of intent, but none of them did. So, and so when I found that out, I was like, okay, he might get some of these, or he might get one of them. I thought they were just going to do one charge, because I thought that they can only choose from three. Apparently, they were able to choose all three. But I do think that Chauvin definitely deserved to be convicted. I'm a little iffy on the second degree, but I do see how somebody could come to that conclusion, especially if they, I wasn't on the jury, right? And I watched most of the trial, but I didn't watch every single second of it. So maybe there were things that were presented in that trial that led them to believe that he was deserving of that. Now, I do believe that the jury should have been sequestered from the beginning, and I'm sure that his defense attorney will use that as grounds for appeal. I don't think that when they appeal, they're gonna take off all those charges. I think maybe at the most they'll get that second degree, but that third degree and that manslaughter is going to stay, because the jury, despite being sequestered, they have to have evidence that they were influenced by the news, or that Maxine Waters influenced them. It's possible, but at the same time, if this went the other way, nobody would be complaining about any of that. Now, as far as the medical examiner, and as far as what happened in the trial, one of the prosecution's witnesses had a chart, and this was a chart that had data from traffic stops where people were pulled over for DWI, whether it's alcohol or drugs or what have you, and they specifically went with fentanyl. So, of the people who were pulled over and had the same level of fentanyl that Floyd had in his system or more, 25% of those people survived. So there is a good chance that Floyd would have survived. There's no, the defense had to prove, in my opinion, that he was going to die anyway. And there's really no evidence of that, because if Chauvin hadn't knelt on his neck, if they had gotten him medical treatment, or the fact that he may have even had a tolerance, that also plays into this as well. He was addicted to fentanyl because he had a back injury, which is for the people who just think he just wanted to be a druggie. That's not the case. He got on fentanyl for the same reason that Rush Limbaugh did, and his was Rush. Yeah, for the same reason. Rush had pain, and so he got hooked on drugs, not on purpose. I thought I
was going to be the bad one today. Y'all carrying on. This time.
No, Jeff's going to give it to you too. So here's the thing. So Floyd got addicted because of his back injury. So a lot of the witnesses were saying he could have built up a tolerance. He was also a really big guy. That plays into it as well. So there is no evidence that he would have died anyway. The other part that a lot of conservatives are missing, and some of them are just lying about it, but others honestly don't have the information. They think he died of an overdose because their commentators lied to him and misinformed him, or just accidentally gave them wrong information. That's also that happens. They talk about, the medical examiner said that he died of an overdose. No, that report never said that George Floyd died of an overdose. It said that he had a high level of fentanyl in his system. We were just talking about this on Clubhouse. What the medical examiner said, and you can read the report if you want, don't take my word for it, go ahead and read it. He said that if Floyd had died by himself in a room or something like that, and no other factors were at play, they might rule it an overdose. However, the medical examiner also specifically said in the memo, I am not saying that this is what killed him. He said specifically, he's not saying that George Floyd died of an overdose. If you look at the manner of death on that report, it says George Floyd died of a homicide, which is why I'm not surprised that the jury convicted him, because the medical examiner, the science, we always say, we like science. Okay, the science says he died of homicide. What does homicide mean? that means that somebody else causes your death. They specifically mentioned the restraint that was being used on him, the knee on the neck. Now, homicide doesn't automatically mean murder. You can acknowledge that Derek Chauvin killed George Floyd, and maybe you have arguments as to why it wasn't murder, why it wasn't manslaughter, what have you. And I can argue with on that level. I can actually have a level of respect because you're not lying about it. You're not deliberately leaving out facts that could contradict your narrative. And a lot of these commentators did that. What I'm saying right now, I've told other conservatives that didn't know, and they were surprised. They had no idea that the medical examiner ruled his death a homicide because they had been lied to. And yes, this was deliberate by a lot of people, and others not so deliberate. I'm not going to say who was lying and who wasn't because I can't read minds. But if I knew this information, if I knew this information, then I know that my fellow conservative commentators also knew the information as well. So if you wanted to argue on the level of, well, maybe it was something else or whatever, that's fine, but don't leave out the facts. And also the defense, the thing is, for him to be convicted of this crime, the knee didn't have to be the sole reason why he died. You can acknowledge that maybe the drugs had something to do with it, but if Chauvin's actions exacerbated those symptoms and caused his death, then he can be convicted. So that's why we're seeing the verdict that we have right now. You may not agree that it's second degree. You may agree that it's manslaughter. You may think that he should be paid $1 million. Either way, these are the facts. And we know what facts don't care about, right? They don't care about your feelings. They don't care about the fact that a lot of the authoritarian right
I'm just sit here. I some food.
Yes.
But I got a feeling that tonight's going to be a good night.
You need to log back into Twitter right now.
I'm thinking like James Brown. I got that feeling. No.
Ooh, good one. Good one.
Yeah, that's my spiel on it.
When it comes down to exactly what Derek Chauvin did, now I'm going to go by what they actually released as far as what the officers said they saw when they walked on the scene, which they saw a man likely to be on drugs. It was already reported that they believed he was on drugs when they made the police report and called the cops in the first place. They saw him hyperventilating, and they acknowledged this. At the point where they put him down the prone position restricts your breathing.
Laying down.
And rifle training, when you breathe and you're shooting in the prone, your rifle bounces like this, and it's extremely exaggerated. When you put somebody in a handcuffed position with their handcuffs behind their back, it restricts their breathing further because your arms are actually inhibiting your rib cage's ability to fully expand and contract, not to mention the pressure of actually being on the ground. On top of that, you also have the weight of a man on your back. If Derek Chauvin had been executing that hold properly, it would have looked like exactly what Steven Crowder had done. Where if you saw the picture where they exercised it on Steven Crowder, the officer's knee was actually at the top of his shoulder blades right here. The officer had about 60% of his body weight on the heels, on his heels and his ankles, supporting himself up so that he could get up off the suspect without putting further body weight on him if he needed to. That is key because it can result in an injury if I have to lean forward and put more weight on you to get up onto my friggin' own feet. Not to mention it makes you vulnerable because if the suspect happens to roll and you're leaning forward, you lean further forward and you end up falling over the suspect, and now you're on your face and you look like a freaking idiot. But regardless, and you can hurt the suspect. Once you have a suspect handcuffed, you're responsible for everything that happens to them. If they get shot, it's your ass on the line because they got shot while they were in your custody. Now, the key is, if you look at what happened to Steven Crowder versus everything was done properly. The knee placement was proper. The officer did it properly. At the point where George Floyd was hyperventilating and he was no longer resisting, they should have grabbed his handcuffs rolled him onto his side and kicked his feet out in front of him, rolled him up onto his ass, and maintained positive control of the handcuffs throughout the entire process. I can tell you with your handcuffs cuffed behind your back, if I have control of the handcuffs, before you break out of those damn handcuffs, I'm breaking your wrists. Okay?
Yep.
Now, what Derek Chauvin did was not that. He had his entirety of his body weight on George Floyd with his placement actually on the neck. That's not debatable. It's in the video. Not only did he do that, but he had his hands in his pockets. And the foot of the same knee that was on his neck was not on the ground. So the knee is flush across the back of his neck with his toe dangling above the ground, which means the entirety of the man's body weight is on his neck. It is an improper way to do it and likely would result in a neck injury in the best case scenario. So no matter what, Derek Chauvin screwed up 10 ways till Sunday of doing this. Now, if he did it inadvertently because he wasn't thinking, then that goes back to bad police training. So in the military, we train different than police do. We train like we fight so that we don't have to think in order to act
over and over again.
Because we do the keep it simple, stupid method. We assume that everybody's an idiot and are a bunch of crayon eaters and shit. So we friggin' make you
train. You're private, you are a crayon eater, pretty much.
To do it properly, which means you act instinctively the right way every single time. That means in the worst case scenario, you're going to do the right thing.
You're going to still do the same. Yep.
And the problem is Derek Chauvin, police don't train like this. A lot of their hand-to-hand, they train on their own. A lot of their shooting, they train on their own. A shoot, no shoot training is the first to get cut from any budget because it's expensive. It is extremely expensive.
I do want to backpack off of what Julian is saying because he's a Marine and I'm a soldier, and he is exactly right about the training. A lot of the police shootings I've seen, and I was called out in my earlier Twitter days, seeming like I was just siding with certain things. I like to point out that a lot of times the stuff I see cops doing isn't racial necessarily, it's complacency. A lot of the times the cops are just on their beats, they're just living their life, they're eating whatever they're eating and doing, and then when shit hit the fan, it's like, oh shit, what was my training on this page on this day? And
when I did that policing episode,
like I was in that
policing episode, my buddy had said that the guy I had served with, Sharif, he got out and he became a cop. And he was a shit hot Marine when we were active duty, and he is a shit hot cop when he was a civilian. And he even said, he goes, you have guys that get on the force and they do the bare minimum to stay on the force. Then you have guys who get on the force and they maintain that shit hot attitude of wanting to always be on point, and they do the training that is necessary to be shit hot. The problem is a lot of cops don't. I mean, Derek Chauvin not only apparently did not, because he obviously didn't react properly without thinking, but he's also a 20-year cop who had a record of having excessive use of force.
That's what I was going to ask about, because we're talking about training, but this man had 17, 18, 19 complaints against him.
Yeah.
That tells me that this is what, in his specific case, this is more than just not having the right training. This guy was reckless.
Yes, it's outright negligence and recklessness. It could have been friggin' negligent homicide in any other scenario. Everything that he did is the epitome of an officer that obviously does not take what he's doing seriously or doesn't care about who he's doing it to. So this is where I say, as conservatives, we like to defend police because we actually admire cops. We admire the idea of law and order. And we like our individual police because we respect the job that they do. But we cannot get to the point where we actually attach that admiration unduly on the organization themselves and all cops, even when they deserve to be criticized because they screw up.
That's
and even
unfair.
When they're malicious, because the left attacked the cop. Don't be so reactionary.
That's unfair, though, to the good cops. To the ones that go there I don't mean to overtalk you. I'm sorry. But that when people say that, it is annoying because the good ones who are doing the work, who are doing the training, who are spending the extra money if it's cut out of the budget, those are the ones who get screwed the most. Like a lot of people are saying, oh, now our system is messed up. No, holding Chauvin accountable is making their job easier because they know what they're supposed to be doing and they're following the training and they're doing it. I know cops. I'm related to, law enforcement. I have military in my family. So me and you understand the difference. Like we have people in the service member who flailed out and who got kicked out and things like that too. It's those guys who make our jobs harder on us because we're supposed to be paying attention to the mission, not watching the person necessarily that's right beside us who's supposed to have our back. I mean, if they're that negligent, I mean, they could screw us over. So when people sit there and they start badgering and saying, well, this is going to be harder for cops. I've seen some people already on Twitter talking about this is going to make cops second guess their job. It shouldn't. There's a standard and we are trying to hold cops to that standard. And cops we're going to hold them higher than we're going to hold civilians. Just like I was held to a standard when I was a soldier, you was held to a standard when you were military, and y'all are held standards in y'all careers and y'all positions. Holding the police to a standard is not to hurt the police or the civilians. It is to make them do what they signed up to do.
It's endemic of bad policy. Bad policy creates unnecessary interaction between the police and the citizenry, which creates a adversarial relationship, which means when the cops need cooperation from the citizens, they don't get it. When they need to peacefully arrest somebody, they can't. And this creates cover for the bad cops that would otherwise be weeded out by a system that pushes protect and serve more than just law and order. And there need be no better example than cops being pulled out or people being pulled out of their cars during the pandemic for praying in parking lots by cops. That is a overt difference.
Or the other cops who were right there with Chauvin. The cops who were with Chauvin. What about the rest of them that were right there when Chauvin was doing what was going on? They were
one thing I'm just going to say this really quick, and then I know
Felicia wants to say something.
Yeah, I was about to say, I know Felicia wants to say something, so just really quick, I'm just going to say.
Still commenting on your comments anyway, so
when this whole thing went down, I had plenty of officers reach out to me, DM, saying, I would never have done this. This is not how I would have handled that situation. This is not how I was trained. And this is not how most officers would have handled that situation. So this isn't going to be something that's going to make good officers second guess what they do because they already wouldn't have done this. So I don't buy that argument. And like you said, it'll make things more dangerous for police officers if these things are allowed to happen. But what's on your mind at this point, Felecia?
I think I wanted to interject when we were talking about the different complaints against Chauvin and how I'm not sure if they brought that up during the trial. They didn't. Okay. So, no. But even so, that's a significant factor to consider. And this is for all of the progressive Republicans. This wasn't a situation in which you just had this really great, wonderful cop who was just out here doing his wonderful duty for the community. And then, oh my God, he saw this black guy and decided to sit on him. No, this is a man who had a track record of doing some pretty serious things to citizens. And I find it ironic that progressive Republicans, they love to pull up the records of these criminals. They love to pull up all the negative things that they did when they were 5 years old and how they got in trouble and in detention and in kindergarten. They love to pull up all of this stuff and to justify the police killing these citizens. And one of the things that I've been pushing to conservatives is you need to be standing more so on the side of citizen rights and not dual domination, but due process. So I just find that interesting. And one thing that you pointed out, brother, was how conservative Inc., progressive Republicans, authoritarian Republicans would not give the base the facts. The same folks who love facts over feelings would not give the base the facts of the case. They always prefaced it with, oh, he's not going to get a fair trial, or, oh, look at how the left is politicized. They conditioned them. So I'm not going to be surprised if I see some progressives protesting, or if there's going to be some GoFundMe accounts popping up in favor of Chauvin's family, because the same way that they did Zimmerman and raising money for him and putting stuff on all of this stuff. So the whole idea that, the left is the one who politicized and profits off of it. No, honey, that's over here on the right too. The question is, how long are conservatives going to entertain the clown show? How long are they going to entertain this nonsense, which continues to pit I guess you want to say the rank and file voters against each other, right? So you have Black voters who are a little bit more interested in conservatism. Well, they're not going to be so interested if the Matt Walsh, and we need to figure out what's going on with him and his wife. They're not going to be focused on wanting to come to this side if they keep seeing the crazies, out here defending states over citizen rights. So I wanted to interject that in there. I'll probably not get another shot for another 20 minutes, but go on.
Yes, you will, because here's the thing. I mean, and we've gotten our reactions, and I do want to talk about how the conservative movement handles this going forward. But first, what do you guys think as far as what do we do now as a nation? I mean, most people didn't expect him to get this level of punishment. A lot of us expected him to walk. So is this a signifier of anything, or what significance do you think that this conviction is going to have on these conversations going forward? I'll start with you, Ms. Pinky.
Me personally, I know how both sides are going to play it. The right are going to play it as some kind of mob rule and they won, and the left is going to play it as it's not enough. We got to make sure that every single cop shooting that ever happened in all history get the same amount of level of scrutiny. So it's like the two extremes are going to take the most extreme answer, and that's how they're going to handle it. But what we could do, and this is just from me, is we could see that, oh, wait, this is the system that convicted him. And maybe the system can work if we actually use the system. We can probably all have a conversation about police overreach in general and not just make it just a race issue, and talk more about how maybe some people should have listened to Senator Tim Scott when he introduced the criminal justice reform bill. And now maybe people on the right who weren't so particular of talking about criminal justice reform, maybe they'll be open to talking about criminal justice reform. And then we can start talking about the different policies that led to this, like qualified immunity, or maybe Chauvin not being, taken care of when he was a bad cop and getting him off the streets. Maybe the Republicans can talk about how we can lower the statism and change traffic laws. Maybe our war on drugs is part of the problem, and maybe people need to start going more into rehab instead of just being out there addicts and doing all kinds of craziness. The law against the $20. We can talk about reining in some of all these excessive laws. The left can talk about how it was a Democratic mayor, it was a Democratic AG, it was a Democratic city, it was Democratic support for police unions. I mean, I feel like everybody's hands are dirty on this. And now maybe, if people want to be adults about the situation and not just point fingers, we could actually come to some kind of middle ground, because the extremes are going to do their thing. We already know what the extremes are going to do. And people who are tired of the extremism, or people that's in the middle who actually want real solutions, we can actually come to the table and start actually hashing that out. Will that happen in the next couple of days? Probably not. But that's what I think we could do. Whether we are going to do that, that's a whole different story.
All right. And what about you, Felecia? As a nation, what do we do from here?
I guess I'm only going to be concerned with beloveds and how really the movement responds, because who
are the beloveds for the uninitiated, for the people who don't know?
Oh, my bad. Okay, beloved conservatives, those who are in either a part of the movement, the conscious conservative movement, or affiliates. Those are always going to be my concern. So I think the focus will be to continue to espouse the values and to continue pushing out there the rights that citizens have. People have to be aware, right? People need to know what's going on, and they have to present different solutions. So for example, earlier today, we were talking about in Twitter class, how in New Jersey, there's this law where you have to have a license to ride your bike. Like, this is insanity to me that the baby. I call all the kids babies, but it's insanity to me that they have to have a license. And
they talk about
Georgia. It was a city in New Jersey, and some people got arrested.
Does that pertain to unicycles too? Because that sounds like some clown shit.
It's probably half the price to get the permit for a unicycle.
But
they price by wheel.
You have these progressive laws that are in place, and you have the police who are going to enforce the laws. So individuals have to know what's actually going on. They need to understand the system. And by understanding the system, then they can, as conservatives, we can show up. We can present that competing ideology. So I'm always going to be more concerned with the individuals that I can influence. I cannot influence the entire nation. The entire nation is going to do whatever it wants to do. But those of us who I consider are kind of like the remnant in this country, we're like, several 100,000 out of hundreds of millions, right? So we have something that we can offer to these communities so that they understand how the system is functioning, so that when they get pulled over for riding a bicycle in New Jersey, which is just crazy to me, they understand, okay, it's because of this progressive lawmaker who created this stupid law. Let the community figure out how they can get that person out and how they can get that law removed so that the police aren't harassing us and taking us into custody and bringing us into this criminal justice system, which is basically a form of taxation, right? Okay, they're going to get more money by criminalizing the citizens. So that's going to always be my push. What are beloveds going to do in terms of conveying people's rights, constitutional rights? What are we going to do to show up? Because citizens, as I mentioned probably yesterday or the day before, they're having to choose between their constitutional rights and local regulations. This is what they are being forced to choose. So when the boys are asking, why can't we ride our bikes freely? Because it's America, we should be able to do this. They have to deal with progressive laws at the local level, which is choking them. It's causing them to have this feud between the police, who again are enforcing. They're not creating. They didn't make up these laws. They are enforcing, and they are putting forth whatever it has to be done in these communities. The only solution is when people are aware. And once people are aware, then that's when we can start to make the change. Now, as far as the left goes, I leave that for the progressive Republicans because they're absolutely obsessed with them. They love the left. They love talking about them. Let them have each other, okay? Because obviously something is going on at home and none of them are satisfied. So
we've got some questions in the chat for you, Felecia. Well, you got to tell people, what is a progressive Republican?
Okay. So brother, we actually talked about this in Clubhouse about an hour ago. So brother calls them authoritarian conservatives. Is that what you call them?
Right-wing authoritarians or the authoritarian right.
I call them statists.
Statists too. Okay, I use that term as well.
And I call them progressive Republicans, and here's why. So we say that progressives on the left love big government. They just think government's going to solve all the problems, right? They want more. Well, we have progressives of that same mindset who are on the right. They love the state. They love the idea of progressive laws like stop and frisk, which was declared unconstitutional. They love these kinds of laws that infringe on the rights of individuals. So they are progressive. They are on the right. They do not believe in limited government. They want big government to be enforced against certain citizens. So I've been sharing a lot that on the left, you have progressives who are coming after white males, particularly white conservative men. So they're always attacking them. Well, who do progressive Republicans always attack? Black men. Black men.
We all got the thing.
They always attack Black men. Black men are the targets every single time when it comes to progressive Republicans. They are using Black men as a prop to be vilified. So every time a white officer kills somebody who is Black, guess what they do? They pull up the Black man's record as if that Black man deserved to have his rights taken from him because of what he has done. So that's why they're called progressive, because they love the state. They love big government, and they want to snatch constitutional rights from certain individuals, just like the left wants to take certain rights from certain individuals.
Sorry, princess needed daddy.
No.
Oh no,
Yeah,
we love seeing your fathers, not I.
The babies.
yeah, I'm sure she had a lot to say about this too. So I mean, that's perfectly fine.
She finds me screaming at the. She's cute. She finds me screaming at the TV or screaming at friggin' the Twitter machine or whatever, and she'll start screaming too. She has no idea what I'm screaming about, but she's on my team, so that's what matters.
No, she knows. She just doesn't want you to know that she knows. That's what's going on.
I can tell you right now, my 9-year-old knows.
Yeah.
See, this is the problem with all this racial
Hi,
shit going on.
Shane. I see you down in there. I'm sorry. I'm saying hi to somebody.
My kids are biracial, and my 9-year-old watches all this stuff going on, and he watches our podcasts, and he watches a lot of the stuff that's happening in the news and stuff because I do. And the more he sees it, the more he's wondering why the hell we're broken. Because he's at that age where he's reading the Constitution and everything for the first time. He has not been polluted by everything that's going on right now. So he's reading all the original history. And I mean original history. I get him original writings and audiobooks and stuff like that. So he's getting all of it straight out the gate, and he's going, why is everybody acting so stupid? And I'm sitting here going, I really have a hard time telling him why, because I don't want to ruin his childhood. But this is the problem. The left or the right doesn't attack black men because they want to attack black men. They attack black men because it's a tool to attack the left. The same way the left attack white men because it's a tool to attack the right. Mm-hmm. See, the hilarious part is if the average Republican were to stop and think for a moment, the average Republican, no, not because average Republicans get this shit. If the average Republican congressman, politician stopped and thought for a minute and went, I don't know, maybe the left does all their marketing towards women of color. Maybe we should actually start approaching men. Trump got it. That's why he specifically approached black men. And I don't care what you think about the Platinum Plan, that was targeted at black men. He specifically went and talked to Latino men. He specifically went and talked to directly the white conservative male in rural and suburban America that used to work in all these factories, mills, and mining towns that got their jobs sent overseas. So the fact is, maybe we should actually, like promote real masculinity, not just talk about how the left thinks every form of masculinity is toxic, but promote the values of real masculinity, like to protect and to serve and to provide and to build up a family, to teach that next generation, to inspire, to build around you. What is a man that does not make the world around him better than he had it when he received it? That is where we need to take this. When you look at Derek Chauvin, you look at everything that's happened. Derek Chauvin is a symptom of a problem that was already there. And the symptom is 150 years of mono-party rule. Mono-party rule. I don't care how much you hate Republicans for this, but I'm going to point fingers today because I'm aggravated. And because I haven't had enough bourbon to not be aggravated. So, and I normally don't rag on Democrats. Anyone that follows my Twitter knows I don't rag on freaking Democrats. But today I'm going to rag on Democrats because you've had the cities for almost 150 years? Over 100 years in some cities. You haven't seen a Republican mayor in most cities in the country in over 70 years. So tell me, and everyone on your city council, your police chief, all of them, all Democrats. So tell me again how you can blame the Republican Party. I don't care whether you're in a red state or not. All politics is cool. Tell me again how you can blame the Republican. The only thing you can blame us for is the fact that we weren't there to stop that abusive mother from slapping you around. And if that makes us the absent father, I'm perfectly okay with that. Then when I come to you and I provide you a solution, don't slap my damn hand away. I won't be the condescending black guy that gives you tough love and tells you to pull yourself up by your bootstraps while you're cemented to the ground in a concrete block. I won't define whether the concrete exists by the flower that blooms through the cracks. But when I offer you to crack that concrete, don't kick me away.
Yeah.
That is what we need to take from this. If we actually go and they give us a chance, go in these cities and actually overturn policy. Don't go, oh, well, we need more law and order. We need to illegalize this and illegalize that, and $1,500 or $1,500 fines for a broken headlight, or I don't know, this guy's got a flat tire and he left his car on the road because he can't afford a $280 tire right now. Why don't I give him $1,000 ticket for his car being there? Mm-hmm. Or hey, he didn't show up for his court date for the $1,000 friggin' ticket for the friggin' $20 headlight that he needed to replace. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lock him up for 5 freaking years because he didn't show up for a court date. Mm-hmm. So how about we actually go with the limited government for a little bit and we pull back the damn government and let people be able to fix things? Victimless crimes. And I mean victimless because if the only victim is that the government didn't get its piece of that pie, then it doesn't affect the average citizen. And there's no reason we should be throwing people in jail for it. If the only problem that you have is that morally you disagree with somebody else's decisions, that's not a reason to be putting people in jail and illegalizing their interactions. There is no reason the government needs to be a part of consensual contracts between consenting adults.
Yeah.
That is what we need to take care of through all of this, is the police are just the symptom to a problem that already existed. Now we need to go in there and actually stick to our modes of frigging conservative governance and actually strip away what the Democrats do, not just get in there and go, hey, how can I figure out how to be here for 20 freaking years?
Right.
And so we need to actually look at who we elect, because a person who spent 20 years prepping for a spot on, I don't know, prepping for their mayoral candidacy or the gubernatorial candidacy or their federal candidacy maybe might not be the person that we want to elect. If we don't like the results we are getting from career politicians, maybe we should not be electing people who spent an entire career getting ready for politics as if they're going to walk in the door and be willing to walk right back out.
Gotcha. So here's a question, because that's a good transition into what the conservative movement needs to do. Now, in order to even be able to even reach out to Black men or even Hispanic men or what have you, we have to be a party that is worth supporting, right? I mean, the conservative movement has to be more inviting, right? So in this specific case, when we're talking about police brutality, I mean, right now, we've got a lot of the authoritarians on Twitter right now as we speak who are shaping in the narrative, and the narrative is false. And they're already going to try to say that, oh, this couldn't have been a fair trial. And they were going to say that no matter what happened, right? I mean, I saw them doing it months ago, that they were priming us for it. So none of this is surprising. That's why I was able to predict it so accurately, because I just know how these people work. So when we have this element, I mean, and this is just one issue where we have to always push back against the conservative ink type, but specifically when it comes to police brutality and also criminal justice, I want to ask, what is the best way to change more minds on the right while we have other commentators who want them to think, who want them to believe a false narrative? So I'll start with you, Mrs. Pinky. What do you think that we need to do as conservatives who actually value the foundational principles of conservatism and want to apply them equally?
Well, in order to apply them equally, we have to call out when we don't see them apply equally, and we have to be the ones, and that's why we look like the ones who are always the a-holes, excuse my French, on the internet, because we have to be willing to call out the people who might be on our team that are not upholding those principles and those values. And that's how we have people breaking off into like the Libertarian Party and all these other third and fourth groups, because they're not seeing the people who are claiming to be Republicans or for liberty or for freedom expounding that when it comes to, like y'all said, certain groups and certain people. When just as like Sonny Johnson says over and over and over again, whether she's yelling it or not, she's saying she want it equally apply, and to have it equally apply, it doesn't matter. So if you're on the side of saying you're colorblind, you don't see race, you don't see the differences, you don't see the difference in gender and everything, then why do we not see constitutional rights, liberty, freedom, gun rights applied to certain communities? So for us as the ones who actually expound these principles, and I served and I love America, and I'm red, white, and blue all through and through as red, black, and green.
Yeah.
I'm telling you that that's why it seems like I'm the hardest on Republicans and not Democrats, because since I feel like I am a conservative and I believe in these principles of freedom, that we should be the ones that are the ones out there championing them in these communities. I don't understand why Republicans feel like, oh, I can't go into this community and do this. If you're preaching the same message to the suburbs that you're preaching to the rural, that you're preaching to the urban, it should sound the same no matter who you're talking to. So we shouldn't. Yeah. And that's how you know if your conservative principles are principle and spiritual based and consistent, because it shouldn't matter what your audience look like when you're sharing those principles. And the problem is we have people on the right who are progressives disguised as Republicans and disguised as constitutionalists who bootleg for statism. And then they wonder why people are calling them out and not a fan and look like they're jealous. And it's because we stand for the principles over popularity. We are for the principles over money. We are over the principles over everything else. So if we want to be the party of constitutional rights, of equality, of equity, of all of that, we have to be that. You can't just say you hold a standard. You actually have to hold the standard.
You know, that reminds me of something that I tweeted out that people really thought was true. I mean, if you hold certain principles, or if you claim to hold certain principles, but you don't apply them consistently, then you probably don't really believe in the principles. If you believe in limited government, but you're selective about where you apply that, then you don't believe in limited government. You believe in limited government when it benefits you, when it's convenient. But when it involves somebody you don't like and you're okay with it, then you don't really have that principle. Which is why I don't call these people conservatives. They may call themselves conservatives. They may think they're conservatives. But guess what? If I call myself a Christian and I say that Jesus Christ is not the Son of God and I believe in Buddhism, but I still say I'm a Christian, then nobody's going to buy what I'm saying, right? I mean, you have to actually believe the foundational principles. We can disagree on other disputable matters, sure. But when it comes to fundamental principles, then those have to be there and they have to be applied consistently and equally, no matter who it involves. So what do you think, Felecia? I mean, how do we make our voices heard, or how do we make our voices heard over the conservative ink types who want to perpetuate false narratives about police brutality?
Beloveds have to understand that they now have choices. So at one point, when it came to being on the conservative side, there was just this one-track mind, right? Everybody was thinking the same way when it comes to certain elements. And then the conscious conservative movement kind of came and just blew it out of the water. Sonny Johnson was there for years, kind of like the lone voice among other crickets. But now beloveds have choices, and they have to decide if they are very sick and tired of being called racist, the ones being called all of these derogatory names. They're constantly losing. They can't even keep their red states anymore because they are being infiltrated and evangelized aggressively. They have to decide, okay, are we going to just let this continue happening? Or are we going to be a force that expands the base? And so because beloveds now have choices, my job, I mean, at some point I got tired of just calling out the right. You know, I've done that enough every single day on Twitter for the last 3 years. Now I'm telling beloveds, look at your progressives. Look at your progressives on the right. Look at what they're saying. Look at how they're making you appear racist. See, all this time when you have Black people, Asians, Hispanics, whatever, on the left calling you racist, it's because they were paying attention to your talking point prophets. That's who they were listening to. So are you going to tell your prophets to shut up and to start speaking the message that you believe in, like the actual values? Because if you don't, you're going to continue getting slapped in these streets. As I shared before, they're going to get the bag. They're going to get the time. They're going to get the fame, but you're going to get pimp slapped. You're going to get throat punched out here as you continue to be called racist. So now beloveds have a choice. And our job, I really feel, is to continue presenting that choice to them in the same way that we want to present choices to Black communities. So for those of us who are in Atlanta, Georgia, for example, and in other areas that are predominantly Black, it's like, look, we are here. We'll present the choice, but you have to decide. You have to decide if you want to continue voting for the progressive left or if you want to actually experience what we call conscious conservatism. At the same time, we're going to need candidates who are going to run and who will be representative of the authentic values. Thank you, Julian. So that's why I'm very grateful for someone like Scott Pressler, who is out here starting his movement where he's picking and helping candidates, authentic candidates, to run. These are individuals that I can work with. I can say, hey, Scott, you have somebody out here in Atlanta who is trying to, I don't know, run for the school board or do this or that. I need to be able to have candidates to present to Black voters when I talk to them. So if we have this kind of collective network working very well, then beloveds will continue to grow. They will continue to increase. But at some point, they're going to have to decide, like, whose side am I going to be on? Am I going to continue supporting these people that probably started me off, with the conservative movement, like the Crowder vote folks or the Walsh or whatever, who have kind of gone on their own edge? Are we going to stick with them, or are we going to move in this new direction that's actually creating results, where Black voters are actually listening, where we are starting to make allies? That's going to be the biggest thing. So.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, especially, and by the way, somebody's questioning your use of the word throat punched. See, what you guys don't recognize is that Felecia Killings is a very, very, very violent woman. There's a reason why her last name is Killings. So she's down with throat punches. She's down with throat bodies. Yes, she does. And this is a serious issue. I don't know how it is that she hasn't gotten caught yet or hasn't gone to jail, but whatever. But she was violent. She hurt people. And I just want you guys to know that. So, I'm just glad that I live miles away from her, so I don't have to worry about the violence. Yeah. But that is why she uses terms like throat punches, because she throat punches at least one person per day. At least. Yeah.
I saw it. I saw Coach Felecia kneecap an old lady in Atlanta.
Yeah,
kneecapped her. She was walking by with her walker, and she just walked out there and was like, crack, took her out.
Yeah, it's really bad. I mean, that was after she blocked her on Twitter. So,
and then she got over and she was like, damn, you just got knocked up out.
I do it so that beloveds can get a visual picture of what's happening to them politically. You guys are getting beat up, and I don't know any other way to describe it.
I think that deserves to get through, though, because I think when you phrase it as this is how they're making you look. Like, the thing is, I know that white conservatives are sick and tired of being called racist. I've seen it for years. So I've noticed that they're a lot more receptive if I say something like, this is why they call you racist, is because whether you like it or not, whether it's fair or not, they represent you. So when Steven Crowder does his stupid bit about Black farmers, and he does his Amos and Andy routine, and when he pretends to be trying to find the truth about the George Floyd case by essentially mocking the way he died, that reflects on you. You may not like it, but it reflects on you. And I always ask the question, do you want these people representing you? Because
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yep.
Marjorie Taylor Greene with the Anglo-Saxon freaking heritage. I was like,
the White Caucus.
Believe it or not. Now I'm gonna get personal. For a minute.
Time out. Because Miss Pinky
Because
and I
my dad is a 6'3" white dude who looks
we
like
gotta go.
Sean Connery.
We have to do a
you guys
podcast
head
with
off.
Kevin.
Yeah. Kevin
Okay,
is
yeah.
coming soon.
Yeah, go ahead. Me and
Okay.
Julian will finish it out.
All right,
Okay.
but
Guys,
yeah, I was just saying, friggin' Marjorie Taylor Greene, that woman irks me specifically because she says the dumb stuff that nobody should ever say. We don't need our own AOC. We don't need our own AOC. We have one AOC is enough. We don't need our own. And the conspiracy theory stuff, I was willing to, be like, hey, we all entertain stupid ideas every now and then. We thought we had our finger on the pulse and we had bad information. Whatever. But then she went with the Anglo-Saxon shit, and either she doesn't know the history, or so she says that somebody wrote it for her, and then she sort of glommed onto it. That sounds eerily familiar to when that black news pundit tried to call David Webb said he had white privilege. So I'm sitting here like, you're saying you believe her now, but you didn't believe it. You thought it was stupid when they accused David Webb of white privilege because, well, she just didn't know. It sounds really, really bad because she has no idea what the history is of the Anglo-Saxon movement, of that entire race and racial superiority. Mm-hmm. It's not something that we should be glomming onto. And had she known the history, I'd say 60% of me says she wouldn't have said it.
See, I kind of think she would, though. I think she thought that would fly. And this is just based on the fact that she has a history of saying stupid shit. I mean, you saw what she said about black men, that we were just all run by gangs and stuff like that. She believes.
How can we argue with her after Brandon Tatum just did another 45-minute video where he references absolutely no facts, but just rips on the black community? Just apparently we're the worst thing that has ever happened to the world. And I'm like, bruh, do you own a mirror? You're supposed to be the one bringing black voters to the GOP, but you spend all your time saying black people aren't shit. If you would not use that line to pick up a girl in a bar, you probably shouldn't use it to pick up a voter.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't say it to your mom, you probably shouldn't say it to a voter. If you wouldn't say it to sell somebody something, you probably shouldn't say it to a voter. It's probably a really bad idea. If a salesman wouldn't say it, and salesmen say some really crazy shit, we all know used car salesmen that snake oil salesmen say some weird shit. If they wouldn't say it, don't say it. It's probably a bad idea.
Yep. It's funny, and Shane Brennan brings up a good point. Tatum went emotionally unhinged today. I watched like the last part of his video because he went live right after the verdict was handed down, and he is.
I was in the middle of that interview. I didn't see it yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean he was basically, and this is the issue that we have on the right. I mean, we have too many people who think this way, but his thing was that he just thought that Derek Chauvin was stupid, and he was mad at Chauvin for being stupid and not, doing the right thing and propping him up because it resulted in him going to jail. He wasn't mad that Chauvin, what Chauvin did killed George Floyd. He was mad that he got himself into trouble because he did something that led to his death. And he's, still saying, oh, well, he died of an overdose. And that's a lot of what we have to contend with over here. But even just going back to MTG real quick, Marjorie Taylor Greene, I will give a shout out to the GOP on this. I will give them credit. I bash them all the time, but they shut that down, that white caucus idea that she had. They shut it down.
I had to give them credit. I got really pissed off about it initially. I even called and was like, I called a bunch of people to vent because, like, my family is my rock. So I called them to vent, and they know where I stand on shit, and they'll just let me vent. And I went down the basement for about 2 hours straight, just went at the heavy bag until I couldn't lift my arms. And then I finally came up and I saw the GOP finally push back on it. Now, I don't give the establishment in our party a whole lot of credit, but I will give them credit on this. And what I got really sick at was seeing Black conservatives actually tap dance and pretend as if that was an okay statement. It's not an okay statement. First off, our values are not based on Anglo-Saxon heritage. They're actually based on a combination of British common law, Roman tradition, and the Magna Carta.
Yep.
My state constitution actually had a heavy influence on the national constitution because our state is live free or die. We kind of lead the way when it comes to liberty. We've been right on all the social issues decades before everybody else. So I'm like, I take it really personal when somebody says apparently only these issues, these values only exist within the Anglo-Saxon heritage. Last time I checked, basic conservative family values that you guys are revering so much, they existed in China 3,000 years ago. They existed in India 5,000 years ago. They existed in Africa thousands of years ago. At one point, this was the name of the game. So I like it irks the shit out of me when I see somebody reference history and they don't know the history. It just breaks my freaking heart because that set us back. Now, I mean, we've been defending the party from euphemisms for what, decades. But now somebody was actually dumb enough to come out and say, we need a white party. Like, what kind of nonsense is that? And I know somebody had tweeted me, goes, well, you know what? Would it be okay if I had white entertainment television or a white party or this and that? If you guys can have the Congressional Black Caucus, why can't I have a Congressional White Caucus? I'm like, it's already white. BET existed because all the black TV shows were kicked off the air because you guys tried to take over in living color. I'm like, literally, all of these institutions that we've created were built because we were kicked out of the institutions that already existed. So,
HBCUs. Yep.
And if you're going to say
Black
that
churches,
they no longer deserve to exist because now that's not the case, good. Burn your rebel flag. If you want to attack history and say that I can't have my damn HBCU and my BET and every legacy of our triumph in history in this country as black conservative Republicans in America, burn your fucking rebel flag. Last time I checked, you're rocking Democrat history on your belt buckle.
Yep, the Confederacy. Yeah, I will never understand why people want to celebrate the party that because they're real quick to say, oh, the Democrats
they say it's a Southern pride thing, and I know my brother Andrew is probably going to see this. My Marine Corps brothers down south are probably going to see this, and they're going to have an issue. But I'm angry right now. The fact is, that is Democrat history. I know all of you are freaking Republicans down south, all my brothers that I served with, and you're rocking Democrat history on your freaking belt buckle. You want to friggin' boycott China, and you want to boycott the left and boycott the NBA and boycott the NFL. Last time I checked, NASCAR has been rocking friggin' Democrat paraphernalia for what, 80 years?
Yeah, until they finally shut it down. But yeah, they were. And I mean, and going back to what you were saying about people who are just ignorant of history,
at least just be consistent.
Yeah. Apply your stuff consistently. And the thing is,
that's why I asked.
Yeah. And a lot of times people don't even realize that they're contradicting themselves. We all do this. Everybody does this. And the thing is about when like for instance, if white conservatives are uneducated, I have found that even though I don't like people being uneducated, when you give them the truth, they're open to it. When I did my series on why the Republican Party lost the black vote, when I went through all that history, the responses were overwhelmingly positive. I only had a few Sesame Streeters who were like, that's not what happened. But these people have never even picked up a book on the subject, so I don't take them seriously. But overwhelmingly, they're like, I had no idea that had happened. I thought it was just because black people wanted the New Deal. They were surprised and they accepted what I was telling them because it was based on fact. And that was very, very, very encouraging. So even though I see a lot of the conservative ink crowd who want to obfuscate and pretend that history didn't happen, or they want to spread false narratives about the Chauvin case, there are a lot who are still open to being told the truth. And it just sucks because I think a lot of conservatives are very confused right now because the commentators have been lying to them about the case. They thought for sure he was going to get off or just maybe get manslaughter, and that was it. But that's because they had been lied to. And I won't name names, but I've seen people just straight up lie about what happened during the trial. I mean, some people say that, like Tobin, the pulmonologist, I've seen people say that he never actually said that George Floyd's knee was responsible for the lack of air that he had. And I'm like, no, he very clearly said that. So I think one of the ways that we can overcome this and that we need to overcome this is while we're exposing what the left is doing, we need to kind of expose that the fact that a lot of rank and file conservatives are not being told the truth. And again, some of it's intentional, some of it is just people making mistakes, or maybe they just go off of what other commentators say and then they tell their audience that. I've seen that. I've done that before too. Sometimes we get lazy, but at the same time, it's important because I feel that we have a responsibility as commentators.
Like these bags. These bags. Yep. I sleep about 2 hours a night because I have to sift through all the I read about a book every 2 or 3 days. So I get to the point where I can't even remember my damn name or what day or month or what week it is. I can't remember. Thank God I have a calendar on my damn phone. If my phone dies, I'm screwed. I'm like so screwed. But
and as commentators,
the amount of time it takes to sift through information, I go through all the major right wing punditries and Brett Bart and all that stuff. And then I go through all the left wing stuff. And then I go to the libertarian stuff because they're right in between and they kind of call it equally. My issues with libertarians are pragmatism, but they call it evenly. Yeah. They don't hate on one side more than another. They hate both sides equally and they call it evenly. So I normally can get a decent read off of like a Reason magazine. Normally they're pretty damn good. Being libertarian, he's normally got a good take. Maj Touré's analysis is usually on point. I land libertarian on most issues. Yeah. Like I land libertarian on most issues. Where I break with most libertarians is pragmatism. I'm like, look, yes, is it an intellectual goal? Because they end up being more constitutional than most conservatives are? Yeah. But the fact is, it's just not pragmatic because, well, you guys have failed to build an infrastructure over like the past, I don't know, 100 years since fucking Ayn Rand made Atlas Shrugged. You guys have basically failed to build an infrastructure. So come back at me when you actually have a legitimate party and you stop humoring people. And by the way, people like Jo Jorgensen, as intelligent as she is, as awesome as she is, with like her 9 PhDs and shit, people like that will never get elected to office.
No, they won't.
They're too intellectual. They speak way above everybody. When they talk, they sound like they're talking down to you. And the reality is it's because they are talking down to you, because it's like talking to Ben Carson. Ben Carson is a fucking genius. He literally reads a book a day. That's not a guy that you have like passing conversations with that don't fly over your head. Like if you see him in press conferences when he talks to people and the media can't even snap back at him because they're like, huh? The whole time. And then you see the look on his face when he's like, that's right, I'm talking to normal people. I kind of have to dial it down a bit. So, I mean, those people will never get elected. But our problem in the conservative movement right now is we title worship, for one. The doctor, the PhD, he's a general, so he must be conservative. Most generals had to kiss ass to get to where they are. You're attaching an admiration that doesn't actually exist there. I love General Mattis as a general when it comes to kicking ass and getting shit done. Marines, we take him very, very seriously. We love him. He's like our idol, the Mega Marine. He's right up there. I mean, he's not up there with Chesty Puller, but he's a little bit down here. But we love this guy. Not the guy you want to have as Secretary of Defense when you need to pull out of a country, when you want to pull out of war. So there's stop title worshiping. So that's an issue. Stop attaching our admiration for cops and FBI and NSA and all of them unduly on the organizations. Don't make blanket statements. We're the party of individualism. So maybe we should actually judge people as individuals on the individual circumstances. Stop making blanket statements about minorities. Less than 0.5% of Black people have ever been convicted of a crime. An even smaller percentage of that have committed a felony. An even smaller percentage of that have ever murdered somebody. So when you talk about violent crime and you say 13% of the population is responsible for 30% of the violent crime, in reality, when you say that it's Black culture, it's less than 0.5% of the population is responsible for 53% of the crime, and the majority of that crime is against other Black people. So while you're standing on your soapbox, let me rip you down by your ankles and stomp on your face for a minute. Because that plays across every race. Less than 0.5% or less than 1% of all races are convicted felons, period. That also goes for police officers that use excessive force. Less than 1% are those police officers. Yeah. The fact is, they just never get held accountable. So the bad officer gets put right back on the street because the police union protects them. So maybe we should actually start attacking the policymakers and how the policy is made versus the police officer.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, we this is something that we can talk about on multiple episodes, but I'm gonna wrap it up. But I do want to thank everybody for coming. We had a lot of people on this live stream today. I want to thank Julian Acciard, whose name I will never butcher again, and also to Mrs. Pinky, Nicole Pinkston, and Felecia Killings for joining us. This was awesome. Really important topic, and we got to keep having more conversations like these because for us, but also because I think people need to see more Black conservatives talking about these issues in the way that we do. So we're just really quick.
By the way, you can just call me Ace. It's a hell of a lot easier. That's Ace. What my whole unit calls me, and it's not because I'm like Deadshot or anything. Although I'm pretty fucking awesome.
Last name.
Yeah, it's just because they can't pronounce my last name.
Okay, yeah, that works too. But before we head out, let people know where they can find you. I mean, you and tell them about just really quick about your run, because you're running for Congress.
So Julian 4nh.com. Please go check it out. I'm going to be adding. I will be adding more to my immigration platform. I just got off the phone earlier today with a friend of mine who is a tactical operations officer in the Border Patrol, and he gave me deeper insight into all the stuff that they deal with. And the best information comes from people who actually do the job, not politicians who obfuscate their positions on things. So I'm adding to my platform. I also talked to a family court lawyer about adding some shared parenting information to my platform as well. So I will be adding stuff to my platform because I have more details now as I talk to more people who are professionals in the career field, because it's all about solutions over politics. That's my whole campaign, is solutions over politics and principled representation in Congress. We're not being represented because, well, the people who go to DC don't care about us. So it's Julian4nh.com. Please go check out the website. If you want to support me, that's perfectly fine. I won't pressure you. It's to each his own. As far as my Twitter handle, it's at ACCIARD 2022. go ahead and follow me there. You'll get more like this conversation. And if you want to check out conversations I've had with Jeff in the past, go ahead and check out The Blue Collar Intellectual on YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and all that good stuff.
All right. Well, thanks again, everybody, for showing up. And if you haven't already, if you're new here, please subscribe, hit that notification button. We have a lot of interesting conversations, and I always try to give a fresh perspective. That's why I name my show A Fresh Perspective. But yeah, go ahead and subscribe, and we'll talk about the issues. But until next time, keep your minds free.